Thank you so much, moderator. First of all, thank you all for your kind in this conference. I would like to share my screen. As you can see, anything? Is it good?
It is great, but can you speak a little bit louder or close to the speaker? Your voice is a little.
Sorry, my voice is I will ill.
Coming from kind of behind.
Is it good now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So first of all, we will talk about today in Smyrna and changing climate according to medical reports in the first half of the 19th century. First of all, I'm a historian at İbrahim University, so my research and some medical reports. In the look at the solar activity events in 19th century or 2000, you can say about this area. As you can see, there's a little decline of the temperature, which is because of the solar activity. When we look about the 400 years of the sunspots of observations, we see the Dalton minimum, and it's rising oppositely. When we see about that blue thing, which is that's wrong. You all know that climate is a big story. In turn, environmental historians of the climate past tend to tell big stories about the past. Environmental impacts of the explosion of the Lucky volcanic fissure, which is in Iceland now. A volcano erupted in Iceland, and people started to starve in Ottoman Egypt. When we look at the screen, we saw the Ottoman empires in Izmir, which is connected to each other. As example, settlement of pastoral and nomadic groups, better security in the countryside, which is not far away from Izmir, population growth, and intensification of agriculture. When we look about medical and topographical observations, I saw one man, Gustav Richard Brown Horner, which is a United States medical emergency man in the 1850s. He came from the USA to Izmir, and he spoke about not the travel book, he spoke about the medical observations. And I would like to share some observations with his photos. Now, the backside of the city has a rich and alluvial soil, so the gardens are here heavily cultivated and large quantities of the vegetables are grown. You know that. This area constantly humid and due to snow, rain, meles, which is the river, and the water exerted from the mills from the numerous wells in the gardens, which is said about Mr. Mehmet Kuru, said about that presentation. Because of this moisture, the plain has an endlessly contaminated air, and this air is very harmful to human health, which we speak about later. Back to this presentation, when we look about that, we see the reversion of the pastoral nomadism, creating security in the countryside, population decline of the land use, which all of them is supported by and climate change. Like what? Like mosquito and locust breeding, which is highly migration to the urban centers. One of this photo about this Gustus Horner is this photo. Towards the northeastern of the part of the city, where Meles open into the bay, there's a swamp. It's important, and the land is so low that the most houses that are built on stilts. Wooden roads, which is wooden causeways, we call that, are used to cross from the one street to another in the French district in rainy weather. The bay is completely surrounded by mountains. So the climate is warm and evaporation is high. Water evaporates during the day and rises apart from the atmosphere, concentrating the clouds and covering the mountains. Or at the night, it descends into the city with a fog, begins to hide the city. In the summer months, this fog turns into dense dew. In the winter, there are clouds covering the summit of the mountains, which is, the Çatalkaya, Tuzla, Cape of the Tuzla, Sipil, Bozda, Tumulos, mountain with snow. And they leave a lot of rain in the city and the plain, which is, we see the swamps of the city at the 19th century, 1991, I think it's from the German archive. There's a swamps around here. The Basmane here, railway, for example. It's rained so much in the winter that there are allegations, it's a rumor, that rains 15 days without interruption. This claim is probably an exaggeration, he writes, I not include anything. This climate in Izmir is hot and dry in the summer, autumn, which is all know that is same as now. While the winter months with humid and cold, however, I saw the recorded that there were heavy rains accompanied by thunder and lightning in the summer, and great changes in air temperature during the winter months, which is we see the air temperatures later. Thermometers show -1.1 degrees. When the wind blows from the north and the south, the temperature changes accordingly. If it blows from the north in the winter, the weather is humid and harsh, and often leaves the snow on the mountains, sometimes on the plains. According to what I heard from a citizen of Izmir or Smyrna, a snowfall that reached 45 centimeters thick that took place a few years ago and remained on the surface for 3 weeks. Another photo, you said, all these photos are taken from Kadife Kale, which is in the end of the present. We see the gate. In the summer, the impact starts to blow regularly from the west around 9-10 in the morning and increases strongly until 6 o'clock in the evening, and the wind comes down. When it blows strongly, which is now the impact, the sea rises between 19 and 120 centimeters. The other is tides. We never experienced tides in Bay of Izmir because Mediterranean region, all you know that, apart from the ocean. As the tide comes, sooner or later the water rises or fall in their former direction, backwards. In the winter, the wind blows very regularly, sometimes through the Gulf, sometimes in a certain part, and sometimes from north. When the wind blows from the north, water recedes a little because the tidal effect is delayed. Another photo, not another photo, a combination of two photos. Last. And Mr. Horner's took the records of the Izmir's temperature in Fahrenheit. We will look to the dendrochronologic reports later. During the winter of the 1835-36, the temperature was 12 degrees below zero, causing a low yield in vineyards, orange, and figs. We know all that, the Smyrna figs, in the following autumn. The winter was also severe and caused severe damage to the fruits. The orange trees spread from the alleys to the mountains had frozen their roots. It's a big loss for agriculture. In the winter of the same year, all the trees that gave thousands of orange every year were dried in the garden of American Consul's country house in Bornova, the favorite summer place of the Franks in Izmir. As we all that looked at this report, I looked some American dendrochronologic reports of Izmir, and we see all the temperature here in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. As we see the reports of him, medical reports of Horner, we saw that it's really accordingly strong and it's compatible to each other. As you can see, -2 plus 1 -3. It's a very big, very changing climate for Izmir that day, that session. Another photo in Izmir, you see fog clouds on the mountains, cordon of the city, bay of the city. Consoles orange are enough to prove that also the climate is mild. It is not consistent and that it harms the vegetation as well the damage it causes to human life. Izmir's climate, location, the diseases, which is important now, it is exposed the most exactly. Considering that it is difficult to say, miasmatic fires, which is cholera, etc., are found in the abundance in the neighborhoods. The most common of these are those that appear intermittently towards the Tuzla, which is we see later, mainly near the harbor and the north side of the bay. Although the three bays is extremely refreshing and delightful, it is controversial that this is the good to bad or the bad wind due to damage it causes when it starts from the below plains and marshes to the Cape towards the city. And we saw in the South Balata archive, and we see now today's South Bay, Cape of South. As you can see, the Kale, stronghold of Izmir, nearly 1,000 years. And in the January, regardless of the cold weather, the unfortunate people affected by this situation appeared in Bornova, which is we talked about before American consul's decision, where they were allowed to settle in empty spaces, tents as usual. They were either left or die or suffered there until they returned their homes, friends, neighbors for treatment. It's a quote about this bad weather. They were subjected to cold, hunger, thirst, violent, ill treatment, and few lived to see their home. And last on the picture, this two picture is taken from another article, but this is the original photo of the door. You see the Kale. And I say some articles about the Sam White from England. He said about in Izmir or Turkey or Eastern Mediterranean or Aegean region, he said about something and create a table like this. Bad weather causes harvest failure, death of livestock, suspension to infection, which is death by respiratory creates, and malaria and locusts again. And harvest failure develops death among peasants, famine, or death by starvation. And its famine creates abrupt malnutrition and instantly creating malnutrition, and develops drop in fertility. As you can see, breakdown of public order, which is bad for peasants, creates famine refugees or development or movement to population centers from towns. And it creates unsanitary conditions, which creates two important things: crop disease like typhus, smallpox, measles, malaria, and susceptibility to infection like this. But it creates gastrointestinal starvation. As the end of the result, historians and climatologists must continue work together to outsource of games of chromatology to fill the gaps in the understanding the Calamite history, change in Mediterranean. While the Ottoman archives, which is talk about Mr. Mehmet Kuru, are important because of the information they contain about the Calamite and weather events. The records kept by Western scientists, as we see now, during their travels to the region contain a great consistency with the information in the archive. Many sources written by experts coming to the region between 800, 1950 are still awaiting the attention of the researchers. And that's my end of the presentation. Thank you for listening to all.